get started. It's 14:48 by the clock on the wall. I'm Joseph Hardin, and we have with us Cheryl Hodgkinson Williams and Gregory Doyle for the second talk, and Stephen Zucker and Beth Harris. My talk is on OER contribution in Spanish and American universities. This is part of a series of studies that are being done based on survey research at different universities, looking at what faculty think about OCW, and most importantly, how faculty feel about contributing to OCW. We also investigate how students feel about OCW, what they would see as being advantages and disadvantages of OCW if they would use it, how familiar both faculty and students are. And the underlying idea here is to get information that can be used to further OCW efforts on campus, both for argumentative intervention with administrators, in other words, arguing for OCW, that this is something that the faculty supports, for instance, or that students would find very useful, and in figuring out who among the faculty to approach first, so that you can build the organization, build the network, and get the eventual network effects that you're looking for. This comes very definitely from an institutional perspective. My interest is in seeing how we can unlock the incredible amount of institutional resources that exist around the world at our institutions of higher education, and how we can engage those communities of scholars and bring them the benefits of open educational resources. Okay. So, this is what the studies are about. We'll be asking how familiar people are, faculty and students, with OCW sites, aspects of the OCW sites they see as valuable. I won't be talking about that much today. I've only got 20 minutes. Would faculty contribute their materials, and would students contribute their time? One of the things that has been worked on at the University of Michigan is the notion that students can be an integral part of the production process, the clearing process of materials, for instance, for the creation of OCW, and work with the faculty as peers in that context to get the material in a form that can be put in an OCW site, the faculty's material. So we're studying schools that are in the process of developing OCW projects, or that don't have an OCW project and are trying. There's somebody on campus, whether it's the ed tech folks, or in the case of Michigan, a particular dean in the medical school, it turned out, or people in the library, or wherever, proponents, where they're trying to figure out how can they go about, how should they start, where can they find resources, where can they find support within their campus community in order to do this. So we'll be talking about what we're going to call contribution studies. And my Wi-Fi technology has disconnected. But that'll go away. So this is unlike some current studies at MIT and elsewhere, where they're looking at how people use OCW. This is not a use study. Right? This is a contribution, a creation study. Would people create? Would people contribute? Right? It's also not a study about the effectiveness of OER or OCW. Right? This, again, is a contribution study. There's some overlap with those studies, but our notion, or our interest, is in figuring out how do we start the ball rolling, how do we get people involved, how can we build a community of support for the process in the first place. So let's call these kinds of studies contribution studies. And the main questions are, who would contribute to the local OCW site, and why would they contribute? So there's lots of routes to institutional OCW, and if I'm going too fast, somebody just stop me, okay? And say, you're going too fast, or slow down, either of those. There are very few institutions in the United States or Europe or around the world that have comprehensive OCW projects. There are many institutions that have a few projects, a small OCW site that use it for advertising, or that have a department or one school at a university that's committed to it. But we think that I think that the benefits really come, and you really get the network effects of for the individuals, the benefits for the individuals of exposure, for the institution of having market influences on the teaching that goes on. In the United States, if your machine reboots in the middle of the talk, you have to tell a joke. Right? So whose machine was that? Right? Do you have a joke?
I have a joke.
What's the joke?
It's the European version of heaven and hell. Anyone familiar with that?
Quick.
So, European hell, it's organized by Italians.
Oh, yes.
Food is English.
Right.
And everybody drives a French car.
What do the Germans do? Okay, so so as I said, we're interested in building a case internally, and faculty willingness to contribute is certainly an integral part of that. This can contribute to OCW efforts in obvious ways. Simply showing widespread interest. Many people are of the opinion, and we hear from administration and from deans on our campuses quite often, that our faculty would just not be interested in this. Our faculty are not interested in giving away their materials. They would be nervous about making their educational materials available. They don't want to be critiqued by anybody on the web. You can think of all the counter-arguments. Right, so one of the questions is it true that most faculty are not interested in contributing OCW? And then looking through all the different things, providing arguments for support, identifying early adopters, getting just a better understanding of why people who are interested in contributing OCW do, and identifying potentially ripe departments or schools or communities, sub-communities within the universities. So this project, what I'm talking about today mainly, is going to be the results of a study that was done at the University of Valencia Polytechnica and at the University of Michigan. Michigan has been doing campus-wide teaching technology surveys for a number of years. It's a spin-off from the Sakai project, which the university was involved in from the beginning. The Sakai project was a project to build an educational learning management system, a collaboration and learning environment. It's used about 250 schools around the world. 3 years ago, we added some OCW questions to that survey. It's a campus-wide survey. It goes to all the faculty, which is about 7,000 people, and goes to a stratified sample of a quarter of the students. The Valencia people decided this year to take some of those questions and administer them in their survey. This was part of something called the MISSI project, the Multiple Institution Survey Initiative for the Sakai project. We added some open access questions this year, and first we'll compare the Universidad and the university results. This is you can look at this quickly. Basically, this is giving you an idea of what the N was and what the response rates were for the two studies, to give you a little more confidence, or at least understanding of how you should approach these studies. The N for sample of 5% of the students stratified by college at Polytechnica at Valencia. They had responses from 186 students, and they did a random sample of 30% of the instructors with an N of 800 and had 230 instructors respond. So that's a response rate of 28.7 for instructors, which is pretty good, right? 15 to 30 for web-based surveys like this is generally considered okay, right? Anytime you get above 30, that's far out, right? That's really good. 9.7 for students, not so great, but not terrible. The University of Michigan survey for 2010 had, like I said, all instructional faculty were invited to respond. There was a 13% response rate, a random sample of 25% of the student body. There was a 16% response rate. You can see the N's for the study at the University of Michigan give you a lot of leeway to look at sub-communities. With 1,000 faculty responding and 1,400 students responding, you're able to dive inside a little bit and see what's going on. I just got the 10-minute warning. So much of our research then is looking at intention to contribute. Here's the first one that has to do with familiarity. If you start with the blue and work your way around, you're going from totally unfamiliar to somewhat familiar to actually have looked at an OCW site, to have used materials from an OCW site, to have contributed materials to an OCW site. Right? And what you see is that there is a large number in both cases, right, of people who have never heard, this is faculty now, right, of people who have never heard of an OCW site or have heard about it but have never been to one. Right? So you can draw a number of conclusions from that. There are many more, significantly more faculty at Valencia that have contributed. That's the 11.3%. Only a very small percent, 2.4% at Michigan.
Is that how the sites are branded at those respective universities? In other words, is OCW a term that would mean something?
The students are, the faculty and the survey respondents are given a definition of OCW,
Okay.
right? And they're pointed to the MIT site and they're given a description of what an OCW site is, right? Then it's up to them to decide whether or not they've gone to any OCW site, not just the local OCW site. Remember, a lot of these schools don't have local sites or have nascent sites. Yeah.
What year was that?
This is 2010.
That was this year?
That's this year. If you look back over the history for the University of Michigan now, I don't have the data for Valencia, but the University of Michigan over the last 4 years, after 2007, it's been stagnant. Right?
What's the yellow?
You have to read it. The yellow is contributed, actually contributed materials. Right? The purple, yes, thinger, right, means that they've used materials from the site. Right? So the next, yeah, and this is on these three here. Yeah, I'll apologize for the different colors, but I didn't have the raw data on the first one, so I couldn't make new graphics. But you get the idea, right? Both at University of Michigan and University of Valencia, OCW is not that well known, right?
Among professors, that's right.
This is among instructors, right? And that's a different, and here are the four groups of instructors, of people to classify for instructors in Michigan. Graduate student instructors are less familiar, right? The youngsters know less than the tenure track faculty, right? Or the lecturers. They know about as much as the medical faculty, which are called clinical faculty, which make up about 10% of the faculty at the University of Michigan. Okay, I'm going to have to speed up with some of this. How much time have I got left?
7 minutes.
7 minutes. So there's no statistically significant correlation with intention to contribute among GSI, and we'll look at that in a minute. There is a statistically significant and increasingly positive correlation between familiarity and intention to contribute for tenure track clinical lecture faculty, the older instructors, right? So that's okay. Could be higher, but the more older faculty know, the more likely they are to contribute. That's good. They've looked at material. The more they've looked at the material, the more they like the idea. Young instructors like the idea when presented with it, regardless of familiarity. Right? There's something about younger faculty that just think this is a good idea. When you describe it to them, they'll go for it. Okay. Would use OCW materials. There's a significant difference here and a methodological artifact. The top one is Valencia. The bottom is Michigan. Blue and purple are strongly agree with the idea that they would use OCW materials. There's a whopping 88% of the Valencia folks who said they would use, but you notice the Valencia people didn't give a neutral anchor. Now this is interesting, and if you go read the paper, we talk about this a little bit. What we would like to do is see, is this a good way of getting the people who respond as neutral to fall out one way or another, right? So next time we might give a forced response, 4-anchor response at Michigan just to see how people fall out. But no matter how you look at it, the number of faculty at the University of Valencia who would use OCW material is much larger than that at the University of Michigan. Would encourage others. The question here was, would you encourage others to use OCW material? Same response. Valencia, much higher. would put up course materials. This is the key question, right? Would you put up course materials? Would you take your course materials and put them up on an OCW site? Valencia, significantly higher, 44, 45% though, of the faculty at the University of Michigan. This could be a critical mass. One of the things that we're noticing from a lot of these studies is there is a large number of faculty who are ready to go with OCW projects right now. Right? So the argument that faculty are not interested in it doesn't seem to hold when you do this kind of research. And certainly doesn't hold at a place like Valencia. Now, if we look a little closer, this again now is going down into the University of Michigan stuff. We can see that there's differential interest in putting up OCW material. Those GSIs, those graduate student instructors, are definitely interested. 52% are ready to go. But only 40% of the tenure track and about the same number of the lecturers, right, are interested. A higher number of clinical or medical folks are interested in that. The differences were even stronger last year, 2009. There, 50% of the GSI, but only 34% of the tenure track, right? 4 minutes. Contribution willingness versus time as faculty, which we use as an analog for age here. You can see falls off pretty quickly, right? The younger you are, the higher the probability. Last year, there was an even clearer graph for that. There's a tick at the end. It's interesting for the 30 and over, 30 years and over. And we think those are the people who are retiring, who do not want to see their materials die, right? Students, I don't have time to go into this. There are more students at Valencia that would help with putting up materials, in other words, work with their faculty. 15% strongly agree that they would versus 4.4% down there at the bottom for the University of Michigan. And there's a pool of 65% of the students at the University of Valencia who are potential collaborators in your OCW development project, right? At the University of Michigan, there's 26%. So we've been widening these investigations to look at other things. I won't go into the actual questions, but we included a few questions on open access this year. And one of the questions, the little graph at the top, 17% of them of our instructors at the University of Michigan now have published in open journals. And the strongest response was among all the faculty was they think that OA publishing is becoming more important. Now, as I said, I don't have time to talk about this. I got like 2 minutes left, right? We talk about this a little bit in the paper. This is strongly disciplinarily determined, right? To the extent that condensed matter physicists are not that interested in open access or open publishing, but cosmologists or high energy physicists are the leaders of the world later, right? So it's very much a question of local culture. There is some relation between interest in open access publishing and open content, right? Publishing, but it's complex, and again, it's disciplinarily determined. That's one of the things that we're investigating more as we go along. So one of the things I want to do is ask people here to join this kind of work with their institution. I can help you set up a survey. I can set up a survey and give you a link, and we can talk about how we work through the human subjects research work, how we figure out how we get this data out as open data. Right now, none of it, the data itself is open because of privacy concerns and because there were not permissions that were used in the surveys initially. There are other schools that are working on it. Did I say that in this slide? Right, University of Queensland in Australia is working on a larger survey. University of Cape Town, South Africa has just given a student survey and is about to get their faculty one. The first look from the University of Cape Town survey results, which the network let me get to today, was that there's a large number. Let's see, what have we got here? This is, I would volunteer to help. 33% of the students at Cape Town would volunteer to help. Interesting. And what is their familiarity with websites? 64% have never heard of one. Right? 64% of those students have never heard of an OER website. Okay. So, that's about it. That's about my time. So we've got 5. I was going to talk about a couple models to expand this kind of research and building a consortium on the model of the MISSI surveys or LibQual, if anybody's run across LibQual, but I won't. So there's a strong base. You'll have to look at the slides. There's a strong base of support at both schools. This is the quick recap. Students at both schools expressed a willingness to help again, more at UPB. Going down the thing, the list, different elements of different parts of the teaching faculty support differentially. There's a generational element to it, but certainly that's not all. And that's it. So questions, yes.
Joseph, first of all, congratulations on the brilliant work, and let me congratulate and encourage you.
Thanks.
And just tell you very quickly, we did in my previous position, I was president of the board at the Foothill Community College. We did a similar survey of yours. We were trying to generate institutional support for OER. Originally, the key administrators told us all of the things you just told us, why faculty didn't want to do it.
Yep.
So we did a faculty survey. The results were strikingly similar to the results that you generated. We brought those results back to the Board of Trustees, and with academic Senate support, informed by the results of the surveys, we passed the first governance policy in the country, the United States, that requires the chancellor of the colleges to make an annual report to the Board of Trustees on what the administrators are doing to support faculty members who want to use OER. And
So there's a success story.
so
right?
the insight is yours, which it started from getting a real-time assessment of faculty interest, which then motivated the governance officials. So you're right, you're just spot on.
Fantastic, right? Yes.
How can professors not know in 2010 about OER?
Next question.
Yeah.
I don't have any idea.
There's a lot professors don't know.
Very specific question. Could you read out your tiny URL?
Excuse me?
Could you read out your tiny URL? I missed it.
Oh,
Hardin.
no.
You missed it.
Yeah, I don't remember. Oh, yes, I've got it. You're right.
Sorry,
The tiny URL is tinyurl.com 2514 AJW. 25T4. I should put on my glasses.
You can put it on the end. Okay.
Yeah, 25T4 AJW. Thank you very much.